We often think of love as fate, a natural reaction between two compatible people. But to Carl Jung, love is not random. It is the result of quiet movements within the unconscious. People do not love you simply for who you are. They love you because you awaken something in them, a part that was forgotten, denied, or never truly lived. You become a symbol, a mirror, a doorway that leads them back to themselves. In Jung's world, love is not the outcome. It is the means. It is the tool the unconscious uses to draw people toward the light by guiding them through the dark. And sometimes, you are the door that opens that journey without even realizing it. In this video, you will discover 5 profound reasons someone might fall in love with you, not because of your appearance or personality, but because you reach the deepest part of their soul, where unhealed pieces are still quietly speaking. Join me on this journey by leaving a comment. I am ready for this journey. Explore the path back to yourself, where the challenges of love are no longer wounds, but opportunities to grow, heal, and evolve. 1. You represent a missing part of them. Projection. Have you ever wondered why someone feels irresistibly drawn to you, almost beyond their control? Even if you are not the most beautiful, the most noticeable, or the most charming person in the room, their eyes still cannot leave you. They see something special in you, but is that you? Carl Jung called this projection, a psychological mechanism where people assign unconscious traits of themselves onto others. What they love is not necessarily you, but a hidden part of themselves, now visible through you. You become a screen for their emotions, desires, and potential they have never dared to face or allowed themselves to fully live. We often do not love others for who they are. We love them in the way our soul is longing to feel complete. A quiet person might be drawn to someone bursting with energy. A person who lives in control might fall deeply for someone who lives instinctively and emotionally. But this attraction is not just opposites attract. It goes deeper. You become a living symbol of what they are missing, what they have not accepted, or what they have once rejected. Imagine a woman who has spent her entire life being proper, disciplined, and always putting responsibility first. She is the model daughter, the ideal wife, and the dependable co-worker. But inside, there is a part of her she has never dared to show, the rebellious, free, unfiltered self. One day, she meets a man who is her complete opposite. He lives by instinct, a bit wild, indifferent to pleasing anyone. He is unafraid of his emotions and does not hide his chaos, and that pulls her in powerfully. Not because he is perfect, but because he is the wild part of herself she buried long ago, just to be accepted by society. Jung once wrote, "Everything unconscious in ourselves, we discover in our neighbor and treat it accordingly." Love, many times, is not a meeting of two conscious beings. It is a collision between two unconscious realms, trying to become whole through the image of the other. Idealizing someone, seeing them as the perfect missing piece, or the one I've always been searching for, is a common sign of projection. But that is also where the fragility lies. When you no longer match the ideal image they have projected onto you, love can easily crack. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped playing the role their inner script had written for you. Here is another example that is less often talked about, but happens all the time. A grown man who lives by reason, by plans, always deciding based on logic. Inside him is a safe but dull routine. Then he meets a woman who lives through emotion, who is artistic, dreamy, and unafraid of uncertainty. He is pulled toward her, not because she is the most suitable person for his life, but because she reminds him of a part he left behind long ago, the ability to flow, to soften, to let go. She becomes a symbol of the aliveness he once had, dreamed of, but gave up to become the ideal man. Have you ever loved or been loved in that way? Has someone ever looked at you like you were the missing piece? And then, once you started being fully yourself, with all your contradictions, shadows, and imperfections, they quietly walked away. When that happens, remember this: they did not love you. They loved the reflection of themselves they saw in you. The danger of projection does not lie in the initial emotion. It lies in the attachment. When someone does not realize that what they love in you is a missing part of themselves, they tend to hold on to you tightly. They want you to stay that way. But that means you stop being yourself. You become a character in the script their unconscious has written, and it wears you down. Still, Jung did not see projection as a mistake. He saw it as a necessary part of psychological growth. Love that begins with projection can be an opportunity if both people are willing to look honestly at themselves. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us or fascinates us in others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This does not only apply to discomfort, it also applies to passion. The people who stir us most deeply are often the ones who awaken the parts of us we have not yet dared to live. When you understand this, you stop being heartbroken when love fades. You stop asking, "Why did they love me and then leave?" or "What did I do wrong?" Instead, you understand that that love helped them, and maybe even you, see a piece of the soul that had not yet been awakened. Real love begins when you are no longer a mirror for someone else's missing part, but a whole person, standing before another whole person, not to complete each other, but to walk alongside one another. Have you ever been someone's projection? Ever felt loved, but not truly seen? If so, share your story. And if you are ready to step out of the unconscious roles and love, and be loved more truthfully, leave a comment. I am ready to see myself, because sometimes people do not love you for who you are, but for being the doorway to the part of themselves they have never dared to touch. 2. You awaken an unconscious image, archetype, anima, animus. Some love stories do not need time to grow. They explode from the very first moment, as if both had been waiting for each other across lifetimes. A glance, a sentence, a fleeting moment is enough to make someone feel they have met the right person. There is no clear reason, no need for logic, just a powerful feeling that is both familiar and sacred. People often call it destiny, but Carl Jung offered a different explanation. It is the awakening of an ancient unconscious image within you, the image of anima or animus. Anima and animus are not ideal types shaped by your personal preferences. They are images formed deep in the subconscious from a very early age, when you were just a child observing the world without yet being able to name your feelings. Each time you looked at your mother, the first woman in your life, the way she held you, spoke to you, and reacted to the world, all of it became stored in your unconscious as your first imprint of femininity. The same happens with the image of the father, or the idea of masculinity. But it goes beyond parents. Characters from fairy tales, films, cultural and religious symbols, and even childhood dreams all contribute to shaping this inner image of an idealized man or woman. We do not clearly remember each of those experiences, but the unconscious records everything. Jung called these images archetypes, symbolic patterns formed from both personal experience and the inherited memory of the collective psyche. They do not belong to reason, but to the deepest layers of the self, where spiritual memory, unspoken emotions, and the longing for inner union reside. Then, at some point in life, often when least expected, you meet someone in the outer world who almost perfectly matches this inner image. You cannot explain why you are so quickly drawn to them, but that feeling does not come from the actual person in front of you. It comes from the fact that they have unintentionally activated a blueprint of emotional memory, long held within your soul. That is why love that stems from anima or animus often feels mysterious. You may have only known them for a day, but it feels like a lifetime together. You may not understand who they are at all, yet you feel like they belong to you in a way that makes no logical sense. Phrases like "I feel like myself when I'm with him" or "she makes me feel alive again" are not just cliches. They are real feelings. But the truth is, you are not in love with them. You are in love with a part of your being that they have awakened. Jung described anima as the gateway to the unconscious for men, and animus as the bridge between the inner and outer worlds for women. When someone awakens this image, they are not just attractive. They unleash an intense emotional energy, like a current that triggers an ancient mechanism you did not know you carried. And that is why this kind of love can feel addictive. Many people throw themselves into intense, consuming relationships they cannot walk away from. Even when they know the other person is harmful, the relationship is unhealthy, or it leads nowhere. What they cannot let go of is not the person, but the feeling of being reconnected with a forgotten part of their soul. The other person becomes like a melody that revives childhood memories you never had a name for. And you do not want to turn off the music, even though you know it does not truly belong to the present. This is what Jung warned about. When we love someone because they awaken an archetype, that love becomes highly idealized. We place them on a psychological pedestal that no human, except those in myths, could ever live up to. And when they begin to show human traits, selfishness, contradictions, or simply something that does not match the ideal in our minds, we feel betrayed. We tell ourselves they have changed. They are no longer the dream person. But the truth is, they were never that person. We were in love with a part of our soul seeking integration, and the other person merely happened to trigger it. This is why many relationships that feel like fate often end in chaos. Because when the archetype dissolves, reality sets in, and the person no longer resembles the dream. Some people try to hold on to the illusion, and the harder they cling, the more it hurts. Others withdraw, searching again for the right one, when in fact they are still chasing an inner image they have yet to understand. Yet Jung did not advise us to avoid such experiences. On the contrary, he believed that meeting someone who awakens our anima or animus is a deeply important opportunity for personal growth. Only when these images rise to the surface can we truly recognize, accept, and reintegrate them into our being. When a man realizes that he does not need a woman to feel for him, but can instead access his emotional depth, he takes a step closer to wholeness. When a woman understands that she does not need a man to make her strong but can directly access the clarity, reason, and decisiveness within herself, she moves toward inner union. To understand how powerfully an unconscious image can be awakened, and why we sometimes fall in love with someone as if we had known them forever, let's look at a story that is both ordinary and deeply symbolic. Emma is a graphic designer living in Brooklyn. She is independent, intelligent, creative, and emotionally deep. But in romantic relationships, she often feels lost. She is not looking for someone to save her, but deep in her unconscious, she longs for guidance. Not material support, but spiritual direction. Someone steady enough for her to safely let go. Then she meets Daniel, a philosophy professor. He is not conventionally attractive, but there is calm certainty in his eyes, and in the way he speaks. He reads a lot, and says little, and whenever he shares something, she feels like it touches a part of her she never understood before. Daniel makes Emma feel anchored, not led, but connected to an inner strength and clarity she had lost touch with. Carl Jung called that part animus, the unconscious masculine image every woman carries within her. Animus is the archetype of logic, direction, structure, and decisiveness, things Emma possessed but had never fully trusted in herself. Daniel was not just a man she felt drawn to. He was the symbol that awakened her animus. Around him, she felt more complete, more defined, as if a part of her soul had just lit up. But like all archetypes, animus can also become an illusion if a woman is not conscious of what is happening inside her. Emma began to idealize Daniel. She saw him as the only one who understands me, the man I've been waiting for all my life. But in truth, what she was in love with was not entirely Daniel, but the psychological strength within herself that he had activated. When Daniel started showing contradictions, hesitancy, uncertainty, or moments of confusion, Emma felt disappointed. He is not who I thought he was, she told herself. But the truth is, Daniel never was who she thought. He merely resembled the animus image in her psyche, and that resemblance triggered a deep but risky kind of love. So if you have ever loved someone deeply without knowing why, if you have ever looked at a stranger and felt I've known them from somewhere, it is very likely you did not meet them by chance. You met an unconscious image within yourself, and they happen to be the ones who awakened it. If you are aware enough to recognize this, then you are no longer a victim of fate. You are someone stepping into the journey of inner discovery, where love is no longer a place to escape, but a place to awaken and become whole. 3. You trigger their shadow side, the shadow. Not everyone who loves you feels safe, comfortable, or at ease around you. Some connections leave the other person confused, unsure why they are so drawn to you, caught between wanting to come closer and the urge to run away. There is something in you that unsettles them, frightens them, and makes them feel out of control. But they cannot stop thinking about you. They cannot walk away. They cannot explain. And very likely, you are the one awakening the shadow within them. What Carl Jung called the shadow. In analytical psychology, the shadow is not something evil. It does not represent demons or the sinful side of human nature, as religion or pop culture often suggest. To Jung, the shadow is the sum of all traits, emotional tendencies, and psychological energies a person cannot or is not allowed to be conscious of or express. It is part of the self-labeled, I must not be this, I should never become that, or even, I cannot bear to think I might be that. But the shadow does not disappear just because it is denied. It slips into the unconscious and waits for the right person to bring it to life. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Carl Jung, Psychology and Religion, CW 11. The more repressed the shadow is, the stronger and more uncontrollable it becomes. And when someone, knowingly or not, expresses part of another person's shadow, they become magnetically attractive, not because they are perfect, not because they fit a type, but because they embody the exact piece of the self that has been rejected. You do not have to be good to be loved this way. You simply have to be real, to live out something the other person has buried. They will see you as a contradiction, someone they both crave and fear, adore and resent, want to be near, yet feel the urge to pull away from. And they do not understand why, but you do. because their shadow has awakened. To understand this better, let's return to a real-life example. Alex is a banker living in Seattle. He grew up in a household where boys were taught to be polite, never argue, never get angry. Every time Alex showed anger or frustration, he was scolded or made to feel guilty. Over time, he learned to suppress his emotions, especially strong ones like rage, demand, passion, or desire. He became a good guy, gentle, patient, never raising his voice, but he was also often tired, unmotivated, and unclear about what he truly wanted, as if his life force had been shut down inside. Then, Alex met Tessa, a street artist. She was the kind of person he once thought was too much, loud, bold, direct, and driven by instinct. Tessa said what she felt without apology. She cried in public if she needed to. She burned like fire, unpredictable and raw. At first, Alex thought she was too different, but somehow, he was pulled toward her. Around her, he felt afraid, but also alive. She confused him and threw him off balance, but also made him laugh, rebel, and want to be real. Why? Because Tessa was Alex's shadow. She lived out the parts of him he had once been told he could not be. Her freedom awakened the prison inside him. Her intensity reminded him how long he had been holding back. She was not just a unique woman. She was the living symbol of the self he had once silenced to become the good man. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Alex did not love Tessa as a person, at least not entirely. He loved the part of himself he had been forbidden to live, the part he saw through her. That love was not comfortable. It was addictive, charged, and hard to explain, but it was also an invitation to come home to his full self. Love that awakens the shadow is never gentle. It does not exist to soothe your ego. It exists to challenge it, to break illusions of perfection. It makes people angry, hurt, and tempted to walk away. But if they are brave enough to look deeply at what is being triggered, that relationship can become one of the most psychologically transformative events of their lives. The shadow is not only repressed rage or desire, it can also be buried strengths, boldness, creativity, confidence, sexual energy, sensitivity, decision-making power. Many people are raised in environments that constantly demand them to be humble, obedient, safe. So when they meet someone who shines brightly, stands proud, dares to live fully, they feel irresistibly drawn, because that person is living out the part they once cut off from themselves. The shadow personifies everything that the subject refuses to acknowledge about himself. Carl Jung, Ion, CW 9-2. And so, sometimes people love you, not because you bring them peace, but because you awaken the part of them they tried so hard to forget. This kind of love often ends in chaos if the other person is not self-aware. They might feel like you've changed them too much, or you make them someone they no longer recognize. In reality, you did nothing. You simply existed, and their shadow responded. But if they are brave enough not to run away, then you, without intending to, have become a guide in their journey of psychological growth. This does not mean the relationship will last, but it can become a turning point, a moment where the shadow is no longer in the dark, but begins to be seen, accepted, and reintegrated into the self. If someone has ever loved you in a way that felt chaotic, clingy, or reactive, like you triggered something too big in them, you may have awakened their shadow. And if you have ever felt uncontrollably drawn to someone, knowing they are not perfect, even full of contradictions, then they may have unknowingly awakened the shadow in you. The question is not, why do they love me? But what part of them am I bringing to life? And in reverse, what are they reflecting in me that I have denied? Have you ever loved or been loved this way? If you have ever felt that love was like a wave pushing you into your wildest, rawest, most authentic self, leave a comment. I once saw my shadow through someone else's eyes. Because maybe love is not just a connection, it is a mirror for the parts of us still waiting to come alive. Before we move on to reason number 4, we want to thank you for staying with us through the first half of this video. In every moment, we have the chance to learn and grow, and your presence here, listening and reflecting with us, is a gift we deeply appreciate. To help us share these valuable insights with more people, please click like and share this video. Every share is a small act with powerful meaning, just like the wisdom Carl Jung left behind. And don't forget, that reason number 4 is waiting for you in the next section. Let's explore it together and receive more timeless insights. Once again, thank you for being with us. 4. You show up at a moment of inner change, synchronicity. Some encounters cannot be explained by ordinary logic. No one plans to fall in love, and certainly no one schedules a meeting for the exact moment their soul opens its door. And yet, you appear, not a moment too soon, not a moment too late, right when the other person is standing at the threshold of transformation, and they fall in love with you, not just for who you are, but because you are a sign of an inner shift that has quietly been unfolding within them. Carl Jung called these kinds of meetings meaningful coincidences, or synchronicity. Not random chance, not simple cause and effect. It is the appearance of a person, a symbol, an experience from the outside world that deeply mirrors what is happening within. That person, you, is not just someone they happened to meet on their journey. You are the living manifestation of a psychological need that is ready to be released. In Jung's understanding, synchronicity occurs when an external event coincides with an internal psychological state, without a clear causal relationship, but with profound meaning for the person experiencing it. In other words, they met you at the exact moment they were meant to, not because you sought them out, not because they found you, but because their unconscious was ready for what you represented. It could be right after a major breakup, the collapse of a career, or an existential crisis. But it could also be a quieter moment, when nothing dramatic has happened, but they sense that their old life no longer fits. In that state, they may not know where they are going, but they know they cannot go back. And then you arrive, as if with a purpose in their story. Maybe you did nothing extraordinary. Maybe you just said a few words, smiled, or simply existed with the kind of energy they didn't know they were missing. But you sparked an awareness, a feeling, or an urge to change that they could not ignore, and they fell in love with you. Sometimes not because of you, but because you were the visible form of an inner state they had never named. Jung once described synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence of inner and outer events that are not causally related, yet are connected by meaning. The story often begins like this. I wasn't looking for him, but he showed up exactly when I needed him. Or I didn't think I could love again, but she made me believe something inside me was still alive. It is a love born from the meeting between an inner moment and an external person, where you accidentally become a sign of a new chapter in their life. For example, Emily, a therapist living in Chicago, had just left a 10-year marriage. She wasn't in despair, but she was undeniably empty. She no longer knew who she was outside of being a wife, a mother, and a professional. One day, during a short trip to Portland, she met Nate, a traveling photographer, single, free-spirited, and always on the move. He was unlike anyone she had ever known. They only talked for an hour in a coffee shop, but his presence left her with a strange afterglow, not because of his looks or charm, but because he represented something she had once been, or once wanted to become, before life pulled her in another direction. Nate symbolized freedom, individuality, and a life unboxed. He wasn't just a man she met by chance. He was a sign that her soul was waking up, and she wasn't only drawn to him, she was drawn to herself through him. Synchronicity makes people fall in love without a clear reason. That love can transcend age, background, distance, or lifestyle, because it is not based on logical alignment. It is the outward expression of something deeply aligned within. When something inside you is ready, they arrive. And when that happens, you are not just loved, you are seen, connected to, and recognized as something meaningful. But at the same time, the other person may unconsciously idealize you. They do not just see you as a person, but as an exit, a signal, a map, pointing towards something they have yet to reach in themselves. This creates both an intense bond and a delicate tension. If they do not realize that their feelings for you are a reflection of their internal transformation, they will place expectations on you to be the path, lead the way, to embody the new phase they are entering. And that is when disappointment begins, when they realize you too are human, with shadows and limits. Not because you changed, but because the image of you no longer serves as the symbol it once did. Jung did not view synchronicity as mysticism to be idolized. He saw it as the language of the unconscious, when it was ready to evolve. And the person who appears at that moment, meaning you, is not the perfect match in the traditional sense. You are a psychological catalyst, a spark that touches something deep within them, right when they are ready to cross into something new. This kind of love is rarely built on deep understanding. It begins with recognition, a sense of, I know you, even though I've never known you. If the other person is emotionally mature, they may see you as someone who marked a turning point in their life, not someone who needs to stay and play the role of the guide. The love may not last, but that does not mean you were the wrong person. You were the right person, at the right moment. And as Jung emphasized, whatever comes at the right time is never wrong. The question is no longer, why do they love me? But at what moment in their inner journey did I arrive? You do not need to be perfect to be loved this way. You just need to be real, and their unconscious will figure out what you represent, not through words, but through energy, presence, and the feeling you carry. You do not need to try to be loved. You only need to be timely. Maybe you once loved someone and never quite understood why, only that their arrival marked the beginning of something new in your life. And maybe you were once loved in that same way, not for who you were, but because you knocked on a door within them that had already begun to stir. If that ever happened, do not dismiss it as random. See it as part of the invisible order of the inner world, and you, even without knowing, became the central figure in that moment. Have you ever been the right sign at the right time in someone's life? Or has someone ever entered your world as the universe sent them, just when you needed a nudge to change? If so, leave a comment. I was once someone's synchronicity, because what you call coincidence might be the language of the unconscious, leading you into a new chapter of yourself. 5. You reflect the self they've forgotten, the mirror. Some kinds of love do not come to overwhelm you, do not throw you into chaos, and do not make you blind. Instead, they quietly move something inside you, as if you are being seen for the first time after a long period of being forgotten. not seen by the other person, but by yourself, through them. You do not love them because they are beautiful, talented, or charming. You love them because, in their presence, you rediscover a part of yourself you had once lost. A part that had faded under the weight of life, had been buried beneath obligations, had gone silent over time, and somehow, their presence shines a light on that part of your soul, like a mirror. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Not every meeting causes a reaction, but when someone helps you see yourself again, the transformation begins from within. They do not need to do anything special. They only need to be truly themselves, and that alone is enough to make you remember who you are, who you once were, or who you could have been." This kind of love does not come from lack or contrast. It comes from reflection. They do not represent something you are missing, but something you once had, once knew deeply, but somehow forgot. They are the mirror of a part of your soul you left behind, somewhere along the path of growing up. Imagine this: a woman who once was a girl who loved writing, drawing, sitting for hours just watching the rain, but then she had to study something practical, work a stable job, and live a life that makes sense for adulthood. Everything she does is right, but inside, she feels something is missing. One day, she meets a man who is not perfect, not wealthy, not promising in society's terms, but he has something that stops her. He lives authentically. He paints. He writes unfinished poems. He wanders just to feel. She sees him, and she sees herself before she loses touch with who she is. She does not love him because he is exceptional. She loves the feeling of returning home. He is a doorway to a part of her soul she had forgotten, the part that lived in her when she was a child before she was defined by paychecks, status, or expectations. And that love does not dazzle her. It brings her back. Jung described this as an essential part of the individuation process, the journey toward becoming a whole self. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And sometimes we need another person to see that self again, not because they give us something we lack, but because they reflect something we already had." These kinds of relationships are not always passionate or intense. They are gentle, but deep. They do not lift you into the clouds. They bring you back to the earth, where your original self waits to be awakened. They do not make you dependent. They make you aware. A man who has spent too long being the provider, always strong, controlled and logical, might suddenly be moved by a woman who listens deeply, lives slowly, connects with nature, and cries where she feels. Not because she is weak, but because her softness reflects the part of his soul he buried to become a real man. With her, he does not need to perform, and that brings him into a different kind of love, not fiery, but profound, not dramatic, but unforgettable. Reflective love is the kind of love that brings you back to yourself, but that is exactly why it is often overlooked, because modern life tends to chase what is dramatic, intense. Wow. We are drawn more to what disturbs us than to those who help us come back into wholeness. We fall for people who are addictive more than for those who make us whole again. But if you have ever been that kind of person, a living mirror, helping someone see themselves again, you will realize that they may love you quietly, without display, without clinging. But in their eyes, you are a moment when they met themselves. And whether the relationship lasts or not, you marked something no one else could. You helped them see the soul they had forgotten. You do not need to stand out, chase anyone, or impress. You only need to live in alignment with your true self. And when someone is ready, they will see you. And through you, they will see themselves again. Not everyone has the sensitivity to recognize this. Some will walk away, not knowing why you made them feel different. But later, when they look back, they will not remember you as an ex, but as the first mirror that showed them they once had another soul, and it is still there. And if you have ever loved someone in that way, someone you could not explain why you loved, only that being with them made you feel more real, then you understand this deeply. Love, in the end, is not meant to complete us, but to trigger our return. No one can live out your soul for you, but someone can reflect it to you, quietly, gently, and deeply enough to change you forever. Love, through Carl Jung's lens, is not just the connection between two people. It is the collision between the deepest layers of the soul. People love you, not just for who you are, but because you accidentally touched something sleeping inside them, a missing part, a hidden image, an unhealed wound, a long-closed door. You are a symbol, a reflection, a marker for transformation. If you feel this video has touched something in you, a memory, a feeling, a relationship that changed you, share it in the comments. Because only when we dare to speak can what's inside finally be seen. And if you are ready to approach love not just with your heart, but with the full depth of your soul, leave a comment. I am ready to love with awareness. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone on their own journey of self-discovery through relationships. You might just be the one who awakens something long forgotten within them. Have you ever sabotaged yourself just as things were starting to go well? When work is going smoothly, you suddenly procrastinate before important opportunities. When a relationship deepens, you create unnecessary conflict. When your health improves thanks to new habits, you tell yourself, just one day off, and gradually lose everything. Why does this keep happening over and over, even when you know what is good for you? Could it be that a part of you is resisting your desire to change? Carl Jung called this a conflict between the conscious and the unconscious, between the part of you that wants to grow and the shadow that silently pulls you back. According to him, self-sabotage is not a weakness of willpower, but a sign of a psychological civil war, where rejected parts of yourself, never seen or acknowledged, now act on your behalf from the darkness. It is not just a bad habit. It is a message, a signal that something within you has not been accepted, has not been integrated into your wholeness. When the shadow is repressed for too long, it does not merely resist quietly. It distorts your life energy, causing you to harm yourself as a way to maintain the old, distorted balance. If you have ever wondered why you keep sabotaging yourself at the most critical moments, what Carl Jung discovered might be the missing piece. The answer is not on the surface, but in the deeper layers of consciousness. Keep watching this video, because what comes next may change how you understand yourself and open the path to true healing from within. Number 1. Self-sabotage from Jung's perspective. Self-sabotage is not a random accident, nor is it simply a sign of lack of willpower. According to Carl Jung, it is a systematic, repetitive behavioral pattern that occurs when there is a conflict between different parts of the human psyche. The conscious mind wants change, but the unconscious seeks to preserve the old state, even if it is outdated, limiting, and harmful. Self-sabotaging behavior is often not immediately recognizable because it hides within very ordinary manifestations. It could be the constant procrastination before an important opportunity, the habit of breaking things just as they begin to flourish, whether it is a healthy routine, a promising project, or a deepening relationship. It could also show up as self-deprecation, creating conflict, or rejecting the role of success, as if your psyche pulls you back every time you are about to move forward. According to Jung, these behaviors result from a profound internal conflict between the conscious ego, the part that knows it wants change, growth, and a better life, and the unconscious parts resisting that change. These parts may be old fears, distorted beliefs, or wounds that have not yet healed. They are not bad. They are simply parts that have never been brought into the light. The problem does not lie in the goals you set, but in the unseen part of you that does not feel safe moving toward them. And so it acts. Quietly, subtly, yet effectively. It pulls you back to familiar ground, a place that once felt safe in the past, even if it was painful, stagnant, or small. Self-sabotage, through Jung's lens, is no longer a personal failing, but an invitation to listen to the part within you that is afraid of your growth. Number 2. The shadow, the deep root of self-sabotage. To understand why a part of us resists what we consciously desire, Carl Jung invites us to look deeper into a fundamental concept in his psychoanalytic work: the shadow. The shadow is not a peripheral phenomenon or an exception in the life of the psyche. It is an essential structure of the soul. According to Jung, the shadow encompasses all parts of ourselves that we do not want to see, cannot accept, or were once forced to repress. These may include negative emotions such as anger, envy, fear, or aspects of society labeled as weakness, such as the desire to be loved, the need for recognition, and the aspiration to rise. Yet at the same time, the shadow also holds our most vital and natural energies: creativity, strength, spontaneity, and latent potentials that we have forgotten or were taught we should not have. The crucial point is that the shadow is not merely a repository of the bad. It also holds what is good and precious, which had to be rejected simply because it did not fit the image of the ideal person we were expected to become. To be loved, to be accepted, to avoid judgment or rejection, we learn to cut ourselves down. We put on a social mask, persona, as Jung described, to fit in, to survive in a world full of invisible standards. The persona allows us to exist among others, but the price we pay is that the real parts of ourselves are pushed into the darkness. The shadow does not form naturally on its own. It is shaped very early during childhood. When a child expresses anger and is scolded, they learn to suppress that emotion. When a child shows ambition and is called selfish, they are forced to hide their natural drive to progress. When a child displays creativity, sensitivity, or difference and is not accepted, they gradually understand that to survive, they must deny the most vibrant parts of their being. Social, familial, and religious messages, whether intentional or not, etch deep boundaries in the child's mind between what is allowed and what must be rejected. Over time, an invisible wall rises, dividing the self into what can be shown in the light and what must be exiled into the darkness. However, the most important thing Jung emphasized is that the shadow never disappears just because we ignore it. On the contrary, the more it is denied, the stronger it becomes, working silently yet powerfully from the depths of the unconscious. The shadow seeps into our choices, emotions, behaviors, and decisions, especially at critical moments when we stand at major life crossroads, when we are about to grow, about to expand ourselves. It is in those moments that the shadow, forgotten, repressed, denied, seeks to speak, and if left unconscious, it will emerge in its most distorted forms: self-sabotage, self-obstruction, self-loss of the very good things we have struggled to build. Self-sabotage, therefore, is not an enemy to be destroyed. It is a powerful internal alarm, a call from within that a part of ourselves has been abandoned, and it is time to listen, to acknowledge, and to integrate. When we procrastinate, when we ruin precious relationships, when we turn away from long-awaited opportunities, it is not because we are weak or not good enough, but because the unacknowledged parts within us are striving to protect an old but familiar psychological balance. The shadow does not resist us out of malice. It merely performs the only task it knows, guarding the wounded parts from pains they dare not face. With this understanding, the healing journey is no longer a battle against the shadow, but the path toward what Jung considered the most courageous act: to accept oneself completely. Not only to accept the light, the successes, the goodness, the likable appearances, but also to embrace the weaknesses, the greed, the wounds, the contradictions, and the rough edges within. It is in that integration that we can truly grow, truly be free, and truly live. The shadow, in Jung's profound view, is not something to be eradicated. It is an essential part of the process of becoming whole. Only when light and shadow join hands within can we cease living in inner division and struggle. Only then can we embark on the true journey, the journey of awakening, the journey of returning to ourselves. Number 3. The shadow does not only hold negativity, but also forgotten strength. Normally, when people think of the shadow, they easily associate it with negative aspects: anger, envy, greed, and fear. But Carl Jung emphasized that the shadow does not merely imprison bad traits, it also conceals essential life energies, the strongest, most creative, and most authentic parts of each person's being, which have been rejected or never fully developed. Every suppressed emotion or instinct carries within it an untapped positive potential. Anger, when acknowledged and transformed, can become assertiveness and healthy self-protection. Ambition, instead of being seen as selfishness, can turn into a creative force that builds real value in life. Vulnerability, if not regarded as shameful, can become a bridge to genuine and profound human connection. The shadow, therefore, is not simply a repository of things to be eliminated. It is the place where the lost parts of the self reside, the psychological resources that have been forgotten but still silently long to return to the wholeness of the ego. However, if these potentials continue to be repressed, unseen, or unacknowledged, they will erupt in distorted ways. When anger is not accepted, it can morph into passive hostility or self-destruction. When ambition is denied, it can fester into simmering envy or chronic self-deprecation. When the need for connection is strangled, it can transform into desperate clinging or profound isolation. Self-sabotage, in this light, is the way the shadow attempts to reclaim its right to exist, even if it must break through the seemingly good structures on the surface. It does not do so to destroy you, but to force you to confront the part of yourself that had been rejected for too long. Understanding this, every act of self-sabotage is no longer merely a failure, but a reminder. There is something within you that is longing to be seen, to live according to its true nature. Number 4. Specific manifestations of self-sabotage connected to the shadow. Self-sabotage is not random. Every act of self-destruction carries the imprint of unacknowledged shadow parts. They operate quietly, but very consistently, repeating themselves at moments when change and growth are imminent. One of the most common expressions of self-sabotage is sabotaging relationships when intimacy deepens. Imagine someone who grew up in an environment where the need for love and support was belittled or met with coldness. that child learns to suppress the desire for connection, building a strong shell for self-protection. But when they grow up, that need for love does not disappear. It is merely pushed into the shadow. Then, when a new relationship reaches a level of authenticity, when love is reciprocated, the shadow part containing the old fear surfaces. They may start arguments for no reason, withdraw coldly, or cling in a suffocating way, all in an unconscious attempt to avoid being hurt again. The paradox is, the more they long for love, the more they destroy their chances of receiving it. Another form of self-sabotage is linked to the denial of personal ambition. Imagine a child once labeled greedy or selfish simply for wanting to stand out, to succeed, to gain acceptance. The child learns to suppress their natural drive for growth. As an adult, when real opportunities arise, an invitation for promotion, a promising project, the unconscious fear resurfaces. They may delay submitting applications, doubt their abilities, or unconsciously put themselves in situations where the opportunity slips away. Not because they are incapable, but because success, in the unconscious mind, equates to being disliked and isolated as they once were. Another characteristic mechanism is projection. Parts of the self that cannot be accepted are projected outward onto the world. For example, someone who rejects their ambition may find themselves particularly irritated by successful colleagues, criticizing them as greedy or opportunistic, while deep down they long to rise. Or someone who cannot admit their vulnerability might scorn those who express their emotions, calling them weak, while secretly yearning to be seen and comforted. Projection makes us believe the problem lies in others, but in reality, it is merely a mirror reflecting the unresolved shadow within ourselves. All these examples show that self-sabotage does not stem from an intention to destroy oneself. It is the shadow's way of trying to protect us from old, unhealed wounds. It is a silent cry to be acknowledged, to be loved, to be reintegrated into the wholeness of the self. Recognizing the manifestations of self-sabotage is the first step. But the real journey begins when we dare to ask ourselves, what part of me is being rejected? What part is trying to be seen through the very acts by which I sabotage myself? Number 5. Complexes and the wounded inner child. If the shadow is the repository of the rejected parts of the self, then complexes, according to Carl Jung, are clusters of intense emotional energy formed from unresolved past experiences, especially in childhood. A complex is a cluster of thoughts, memories, and emotions bound together around a painful theme, and they can be powerfully triggered when encountering similar situations in the present. Complexes do not merely live in memory. They have a life of their own, and when activated, they cause people to react excessively, disproportionately to the actual event. For example, a child who was criticized and had their value denied whenever they tried to express themselves will develop a complex around inadequacy. When they grow up, whenever they face an opportunity to express themselves, whether it is a presentation, an interview, or simply voicing an idea in a group, that complex can flare up. The adult at that moment is not merely reacting to the current situation, but is reliving the primal pain from childhood. They may fall into extreme anxiety, procrastinate, or sabotage the opportunity before they risk being humiliated once again. Carl Jung also described another closely related psychological phenomenon: repetition compulsion, the tendency to repeat old painful patterns in the unconscious hope that this time the ending will be different. Someone who experienced abandonment in childhood may unconsciously choose relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. When these relationships inevitably fail, the old wound is reactivated, and the cycle continues. It is not because they want to be hurt, but because the unconscious mind is attempting to recreate the old situation with the desperate hope of finally resolving it. It is important to understand that these self-protective strategies initially formed to help the child survive. Repressing emotions, withdrawing, pleasing others, all were adaptive ways to survive in an emotionally unsafe environment. But as adults, those survival strategies become burdens. Instead of protecting, they limit, suppress, and sabotage the path of personal growth. Self-sabotage, from this perspective, is no longer merely a failure to try. It is the result of deep, unhealed wounds operating from the shadows. Healing the wounded inner child is not about returning to the past to blame, but about recognizing that those old strategies once served their purpose, and now it is time to let them go and choose a new way of living, a way that is more mature, more whole. Number 6. Self-sabotage as the soul's attempt to restore balance. In Carl Jung's psychological worldview, the human mind does not operate chaotically. On the contrary, it is a tightly self-regulating system, constantly seeking internal balance. When one part of the ego becomes extreme, too ambitious, too controlling, or too identified with an ideal image, the forgotten parts in the unconscious will silently rise to create an opposing movement. Self-sabotage, in Jung's light, is a vivid expression of this mechanism, not just to destroy, but to save the threatened wholeness. Imagine a person who pours all their energy into their career. They work tirelessly, deny themselves rest, sacrifice relationships and personal health just to achieve accomplishments celebrated by society. In the eyes of others, they are a model of willpower and success. But beneath the surface, other parts of the self, the need for love, the need for play, the need to live naturally, are being increasingly excluded from conscious life. According to Jung, whenever one polarity becomes too dominant, the abandoned part will accumulate energy in the unconscious and await the right moment to surface. And it often erupts through behaviors that seem irrational on the surface: uncontrollable exhaustion, reckless indifference at critical moments, and decisions that sabotage long-built achievements. These actions, in reality, are not betrayals, but salvations. The soul, trying to rescue the parts being suffocated, forcing the person to stop, to listen, and to rebalance themselves. Another example is those who try to exert absolute control over their lives. They meticulously manage every detail, predict every possibility, and allow no uncertainty to creep into their existence. Control brings a sense of safety, but at the cost of natural vitality, flexibility, and the ability to embrace the new. When control becomes rigid, the shadow, representing spontaneity, creativity, and flexibility, will rise. It may manifest through self-sabotaging acts, making sudden decisions that wreck plans, losing focus, or even complete surrender at crucial moments requiring strict control. Once again, this breaking point is not meant to destroy, but to remind us that no life can exist painted in a single color. According to Jung, the human psyche does not seek only light, success, or perfection. What the soul seeks is wholeness, a state in which both light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, reason and emotion all have their rightful place. When any part of the self is rejected, whether ambition, vulnerability, or the desire to be loved, self-sabotage will emerge as a mechanism to restore that wholeness. It forces us to face what has been denied, even if the confrontation is painful. Especially, self-sabotage acts as a mechanism to prevent the inflation of the ego. When the ego becomes overly identified with an ideal image, the successful one, the perfect one, the invincible one. The shadow will intervene. Failure, mistakes, and self-destruction in this case are not signs of weakness, but ways to keep the psyche from tipping too far to one side. Jung called this phenomenon enantiodromia, the tendency for things pushed to the extreme to transform into their opposite. When a person goes too far into the light, the darkness will rise, not to destroy, but to restore balance. When we understand this, the way we perceive self-sabotage completely changes. Instead of blaming, punishing, or shaming ourselves, we can learn to listen. Every time we sabotage ourselves, every time we procrastinate at a crucial moment, every time we reject a good opportunity, instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" we can ask, "What part of me is longing to be heard?" It may be the part needing rest, needing love, needing to let go of unreasonable expectations. It may be the creative part once rejected, the tender part once belittled. Self-sabotage, ultimately, is an invitation to return to oneself, not the ideal self, not the perfect ego, but the complex human being, full of contradictions, both light and dark, both strong and vulnerable. In the individuation journey that Jung described, wholeness is not achieved by destroying the shadow, nor by eliminating the bad parts of ourselves. Wholeness comes from acceptance of everything that belongs to us, both the cherished and the despised parts. Thus, every time self-sabotage happens, it is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is a sign that you are being called to go deeper, to listen more closely, and to live more truthfully with everything that makes you who you are. It is not failure, but the first step on the journey back to yourself. Self-sabotage, in the end, is not just a self-regulating mechanism to restore psychological balance. It also reflects a deeper layer of conflict, the confrontation between the familiar ego and the awakening call from the deepest parts of the being. When self-sabotaging behaviors repeat, it is not merely a sign of imbalance, but evidence that the soul is struggling at the threshold of a great transformation. And to better understand the nature of this struggle, we must step into the central concept in Jung's thought, the process of individuation. Number 7. Self-sabotage as resistance to the process of individuation. At the center of Carl Jung's psychological philosophy is a profound concept, the process of individuation. According to Jung, the deepest purpose of human life is not to achieve social success, power, or even happiness in the conventional sense. The true goal of the soul is to become whole, to unify all aspects within oneself, from light to shadow, from the conscious ego to the deepest layers of the unconscious. Individuation is not about perfection. It is the journey of stripping away illusions, confronting the parts of ourselves we have rejected, and accepting the entirety of our being as one unified whole. It is a journey of returning to oneself, transcending the artificial layers built by social expectations, education, family, and hidden fears. However, this process does not happen easily, because individuation demands the relinquishing of familiar images of ourselves, the masks we have worn for so long that we have identified with them. These may be the image of the dutiful child, the exemplary employee, the friend who always pleases others, or the successful person who never fails. These patterns, though burdensome, still offer a false sense of safety, and thus, every step toward individuation is accompanied by deep internal resistance. Self-sabotage in this context is an expression of that resistance. As we approach true change, parts of ourselves tied to the old ego begin to react. We sabotage growth opportunities not because we lack ability, but because we fear losing what is familiar, even if it no longer serves our development. The old ego, though limiting and painful, still provides a kind of stability. Stepping away from that stability into the unknown territory of a new self demands a courage we are not always ready to summon. There is a profound paradox here. We fear our true selves more than we fear failure. Becoming whole requires abandoning the illusions about ourselves, confronting our smallness, our shortcomings, and our internal contradictions. It demands admitting that we are both strong and weak, both noble and selfish, both longing for love and afraid of being hurt. This process is painful not only because of what must be given up, but because the true light of the self can be overwhelming. As Jung once wrote, "No one can look at the light for too long without being blinded." Self-sabotage, when understood correctly, is not merely fear of failure or lack of discipline. It is the instinctive resistance to the highest demand that individuation places on us, the courage to become ourselves. It is the inner battle between the part of the ego that clings to the old, decaying state and the deep part of the soul yearning to awaken, to live authentically and fully. Recognizing this is a turning point. When self-sabotage occurs, instead of judging or trying to force correction through external measures, we can pause and ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? What part of the old ego is trying to hold me back? What truth about my real self am I hesitant to face? The answers to these questions are not comfortable, but it is in the honesty with fear, in the honesty with weakness, that we truly begin to step onto the path of individuation. Self-sabotage, deeply understood, is an inseparable part of that awakening journey. It is the final convulsion of the old ego before we muster the courage to step into a life that is truer, larger, and more whole. Number 8. The way forward: how to break free from the pattern of self-sabotage. After understanding that self-sabotage is part of a psychological self-regulation and defense mechanism, and more deeply, a resistance to the journey of individuation, the question arises, how can one truly break free from this cycle of self-sabotage? Jung did not offer simple solutions. For him, healing was not about fixing oneself to meet social standards of perfection, but about establishing a conscious and sustainable relationship with the shadow, with the parts of oneself that have been rejected. This process requires courage, perseverance, and absolute honesty with oneself. Below are basic and practical approaches in Jung's spirit that help step by step to liberate oneself from the pattern of self-sabotage. The first step is to recognize the shadow. Jung once said, "You cannot change anything until you become conscious of it." Much of the shadow operates unconsciously, precisely because we are unaware of it. To start recognizing it, one must observe strong emotional reactions in daily life. When someone or a situation triggers excessive anger, jealousy, judgment, or uncontrollable anxiety, it often indicates that a part of the shadow is being activated. For example, if you feel particularly resentful towards a confident, successful colleague, it may be that you are rejecting your ambition and self-esteem. Or if you easily criticize those who display vulnerability, you might be denying the sensitive part within yourself. A practical method is to keep a journal of situations that provoke strong reactions during the day. Who, what, and why. Without judgment, just record. Over time, you will see a clear pattern emerge, parts of the shadow that are demanding attention. The second step is dream analysis. Jung regarded dreams as the window into the unconscious. In dreams, the shadow often appears as strange, frightening figures or bizarre scenarios that the waking mind would not invent. For example, you might dream of running from a masked figure, or wandering lost in a dark, labyrinthine house. Instead of dismissing dreams as meaningless, Jung advised approaching them as vivid messages from the deeper mind. Recording dreams immediately upon waking, noting the images, emotions, and especially figures or settings that provoke unease, will help reveal unconscious parts trying to communicate. For instance, recurring dreams of being late for school or failing exams could signify that the shadow related to inadequacy and the feeling of not being good enough is trying to surface. Dream analysis does not have to be complicated. Simply ask, what is this dream trying to show me about myself that I have refused to see? The third step is practicing active imagination, one of the most creative and profound tools Jung introduced. Instead of just thinking about the problem, you actively enter into dialogue with it. For example, if you recognize a part of you that sabotages opportunities, close your eyes and imagine it as a character. What does it look like? How does it sound? What does it want? What is it afraid of? Then start a conversation. Ask it why it acts this way. Listen without judgment. You might be surprised to discover that the sabotaging part is trying to protect you from old wounds from a time when you were too young to understand or process them. For example, in an active imagination session, someone might discover that their saboteur is a trembling 7-year-old child who believes success will lead to isolation and abandonment. Engaging with and listening to this symbolic figure helps shift the energy from confrontation to cooperation, from repression to understanding. Another effective method is keeping a journal and working with symbolic imagery. Journaling here is not merely recording events, but a tool for exploring emotions, conflicts, and unacknowledged parts of the self. You can start with open-ended questions. What today triggered a strong reaction in me? Swing. What am I ashamed of or trying to hide? If I had to describe the part of me that is causing resistance as an image, what would it look like? Beyond writing, you can draw, sketch, or create symbolic representations of the shadow parts. For instance, someone might draw a thick gray wall separating them from the sunlight, realizing through this that inner fear is blocking their growth. Bringing the shadow from a vague state into a concrete image helps the unconscious begin to be read by the conscious mind, a crucial step in integration and healing. The key point, as Jung emphasized, is not to try to fix the shadow, but to establish a conscious relationship with it. When we attempt to fix it, we maintain a confrontational stance, placing the shadow on the opposing side. This only strengthens it and drives it further underground. Instead, the required attitude is respect and cooperation, understanding that the shadow was originally formed to protect you. It is not an enemy. It carries creative energy, strength, and unrealized potential. Instead of trying to suppress fear, acknowledge it. Instead of rejecting anger, seek to understand the message behind it. Instead of despising vulnerability, learn to see it as a gateway to deeper and more authentic connections with yourself and others. For example, someone might realize that their habit of procrastination is not simply laziness, but a protective response whenever they feel excessively demanded upon, a legacy from a childhood where love was conditional on achievement. Upon understanding this, they no longer merely force themselves to work harder, but learn to listen to their limits and create healthy boundaries. Procrastination diminishes not because it is suppressed, but because the inner part no longer needs to rebel. Healing self-sabotage, therefore, is not a battle against oneself, but a journey of dialogue, compassion, and integration. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Every time we dare to look directly at self-sabotage, to move beyond the fear of being hurt, we take another step on the journey of becoming ourselves, a being not perfect, but whole. Throughout the journey of exploring self-sabotage through the lens of Carl Jung, one thing becomes clear: self-sabotage is not failure, but a profound invitation to return to the inner self. Behind every act of breaking something good, behind every moment of procrastination, avoidance, or self-defeat, there is not merely fear or weakness, but a silent call from the soul, demanding that we stop, look inward, and honestly face all the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten. And self-sabotage, from that deep perspective, is the moment when external dreams shatter, so that we have no choice but to begin the journey of looking within. That journey is not easy. It requires letting go of beautiful illusions about a perfect self, accepting complexity, contradictions, wounds, and also the potent energies within the shadow that we have rejected. Do not try to eliminate the shadow, for the shadow, though it holds parts we once feared, also carries vital energy, creativity, vibrancy, and true capacity for love. Without it, a human being would be nothing but an empty shell. Learn to integrate the shadow. Open your heart to embrace both the light and the darkness within. Realize that true maturity does not come from conquering oneself, but from understanding and walking alongside oneself in all of one's beauty and imperfection. Self-sabotage, in its deepest meaning, is the first step on the path toward becoming the whole person we were born to be. It is not the end point. It is the beginning of a life lived authentically, a life where every part of us, from the most vulnerable to the most powerful, has the right to exist, to be loved, and to be understood. And what about you? What moments have you recognized yourself sabotaging your own life? Is there a shadow part within you waiting to be heard and understood? Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the healing journey begins with the courage to speak aloud what we have long carried in silence.